All right, I'm going to call the Neary Building Committee dash Communication Subcommittee meeting to order. It is Monday, June 10th, 2024. It is 10:34 a.m. We have 2 out of our 3 voting members present. And I know the superintendent may join us. I know Stephanie and Kathleen had conflicts today. Expect this to be a pretty short meeting, but I do think we have some important items to align on with the team here. So first is approval of meeting minutes for May 24, 2024. Denise, did you have any comments?
No, none.
Okay, then I will move that we accept the meeting minutes as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
No further discussion. Roll call vote, Denise?
Aye.
And I am aye as well. So that is 2-0. Next is update on the project update release. So at our last meeting, we approved a press release to go out updating the community on the status of the project and where we are headed this summer now that the PDP had been submitted to the MSBA. It included the range of all options. We did get a table as the committee voted in there showing all options in the costs of each of those. So that is scheduled to go out this week. I guess my question, Denise, for you is whether we should articulate, now that we have taken some motions as a full building committee, whether we should narrow down where we're headed, or just kind of leave the options out there for the committee to understand, not the committee, the community to understand.
I don't know. I think, if we were sending out a notice, for that specific purpose, I would say no. But if it's part of the next newsletter or announcement, then I would agree. But I don't think we really need to do that. But I think at our next press release, we should say that as a vote of the committee, the choices have been narrowed down. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, I agree with that, because I also hope that maybe we'll have a new square footage number we're working with, right? It may not be perfect, but it's certainly going to be lower than the square footage that was used to come up with the initial estimates, right? So I think that will be part of that next release. So in the interest of getting something out to make sure people understand where we're at and where we're not at, I think we're on the same page.
Yeah, I just fear confusing people. If we start throwing so many numbers out there and so many choices, and I just think it's going to get confusing.
Yeah, I agree. So I will coordinate with Greg on that this week to figure out when the right timing is to sequence and get that out as well. Okay, the next is protocol for committee members making statements or updates to other boards. We're obviously in a very compressed time period here where our committee will be our full committee will be making, candidly, some very difficult and important decisions of how to kind of move this forward. Some of which will require significant public outreach, some of which will be more procedural. And as we all know, message delivery is very critical to how that gets done. And 4 out of our 7 voting members on the full committee actually represent other committees, me being one of them, right? So anytime I have a capital meeting, I have a standing members update where I update on the status of the Neary Building Committee. My hope actually here is to not have individual members making updates back to their committee. And instead, if the school committee, for example, wants an update on the Neary building project, that the Neary Building Committee actually have a posted meeting where the chair is at least given the opportunity to present it, so that the same message is being presented to all 4 of those boards. It doesn't mean that others can't weigh in, but I think message delivery is incredibly important to get factual information out there and make sure that those 4 boards in particular, committees, whatever you want to call them, are getting the same information at the same time. Now, for example, capital does not meet as often as the select board, right? Capital may or may not want updates at certain meetings, but I think I should at least have a posted agenda update where there's like a formal, I don't call it 1 or 2 slide presentation that really outlines where we're at on the project, as opposed to kind of taking it in any which way. It also then allows for the proper discussion amongst the members, as opposed to based on open meeting law. If you do it as part of a members report, it doesn't allow the members to have kind of that back and forth dialogue. It's really a one-sided dialogue. It's much closer to public comment than that. So, what I was hoping to make a motion, Denise, was that the communication subcommittee ask that all reports be done as, a full committee, or at least the communication subcommittee comes to make those presentations to ensure kind of a unified messaging, at least during the summer months.
No, I couldn't agree with you more because the interpretations could get changed. And I think that it should be a unified interpretation of what has happened by the entire board, or at least the communications board, because you're going to have more than one, theory out there. And I think it's going to allow for more confusion, which is what I'm really hesitant about. Perception is going to be very important here.
Yeah, so I completely agree, right? And I try to take my opinions out of any updates, but at the same point, I do have a vote on this committee, right? You do the same thing, right? But there's naturally biases that come out in any presentation, right? And even if you try to hide them, like I don't know, right? Like so I think that's the important part, is just to make sure all voices have an opportunity to be at the table. They may choose not to be at the table, and I realize that's a more logistical issue, but Greg, I see your hand up.
So good morning. Sorry, I was late. Do you think I agree. I think it should be very organized and planful in terms of the communications. Do you think that after each of we have so many of them, like a summary that can be provided to each person to read, like if Roger's at the Southborough School Committee, like just a summary, like that is generated by the communication committee of what could be said.
Yes.
And if more questions are needed, then inviting the committee in a formal way to attend the school committee or whatever board committee it is.
Yeah, there will certainly be formal updates that are going to be required, right? Like when we get to the end of the summer and we start to narrow down the options. Yeah, I think that's going to be a presentation that would be a full committee thing. I love your idea. My only concern is timing, right? So like, for example, school committees, second Wednesday, right, of every month. I realize summer schedule is different. Select boards usually every other Tuesday, first and third. I have no idea when advisory meets. Capital, I at least can control the timing of that based, I think that should be the standard. But if there isn't a statement that's ready based on the timing of the meetings, there should be at least the option for the communications subcommittee to come and help make that presentation, which will then naturally, I guess, keep it consistent.
Thanks.
All right. So Denise, go ahead, Greg. Did you have something else? All right, Denise, I'm going to try this motion, and then let's see if we agree on it. So I'll move that the communications subcommittee recommend that for member updates to other boards or committees, that a prepared statement from the communications subcommittee be used for purposes of that discussion to ensure consistency, and or a posted meeting of the Neary Building Committee and or subcommittee, communications subcommittee, depending upon the member makeup, be posted for the same reason. There's a second to that.
So I'll second that.
All right, any discussion? Okay, roll call vote, Denise?
Aye.
And I am aye as well. next is open forum format for the summer months. So I think the Skanska schedule had up to 3 open forums this summer. I think we all have very big concerns about the engagement of the public. It's given the time of the year, but also just given our attempts to date, right, to engage the public. You know, we have heard consistently that people want to be able to react to plans. I think we're now at that stage where we can start to have people react to things and validate some of the direction that the committee is in the process of providing. So I think that will be helpful. But we all know it's just a very difficult time of the year, but we can't also just press the pause button. So I think it's up to the communications subcommittee to align on how best to do this and how we think people are going to want to react and do this. I think Mary Ann said this, but if I'm giving the wrong person credit, let me know, Jim or Katie. But I think the thought process, at least that was discussed at one of our meetings, was to have an avenue for people to submit questions in advance, so that even if they couldn't attend, the question would be answered as part of a recorded session and then available for playback. So then there could just be this dialogue back and forth between the individual that has the question, or I'm sure if Denise had the question, for example, there's 100 other residents that had that question. I really like that approach because I think it gives people the opportunity to interact real time or as their schedules allow during the summer without halting our progress. I then do think it comes down to a question of whether you have in-person presentations or whether you just do it solely via Zoom if that's how you're capturing most of your questions, and or whether there's a mix that we offer. So Denise, I saw your hand go up at some point during that discussion.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, if we were going, rather than making a choice, if the choice is to do Zoom completely, that's great. If it isn't, maybe we do a combination of both of the same night. That way it's not two separate attendances. So in other words, we're on Zoom and we're also in person, or we just do Zoom. Because I think that gives people, if they're away, the ability to chime in. And I guess I'm not trying to bow out of 3, but I'm wondering whether we should just do 2. One in the month that we're not having, that we're not in school, one in July and one in August. There are going to be vacations, which are obviously going to prohibit attendance. But if we could do both at the same time or just Zoom, I think that might be a good way. And hopefully if we get more people, it's the summer. And I think that's going to be a tremendous difficulty.
Completely agree. Just, Jim, there was one in June, right? I don't want to shortchange June, right? At least you had one tentatively scheduled for June.
Yeah, so we actually had 2. We had one June 20th and one June 27th. And the idea would be that it would basically be the same presentation for folks that could or could not make it on either weeks. But we could definitely, I would leave it up to this committee as far as, the timing of that. But I do think, especially with decreasing the number of options, I think that's an important development that folks in the community should know. So I think that would be primarily the subject matter for the June forum. So Katie, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on what would be presented in that meeting and, the timing in June.
So the 3 items that we have on the agenda for the upcoming NBC. So the options is one of them. And I think a little bit of how the program is being defined. Secondly, the site. So we want to just give an update on all of the things related to that. So all 3 of those things would be covered, but I think that could be done in one meeting. We're going to give a lot of those site updates on the 17th. And then community forums, we had one scheduled for the 20th and one for the 27th. If we had it, say, just on the 27th, we could give updates on everything that we have to date. I think that's would probably cover a lot of questions. I think people are going to have questions related to all of those things. So we could have sort of the most up-to-date informative meeting. It does seem like a lot of updates, but again, the concern of making sure that people get a chance to ask their questions. I think we're trying to find the balance point between those.
Okay, so it sounds like absolutely need a virtual option. And to the extent we can tie that into an in-person attendance in that same session, that's the ideal. Sounds like we need to align on at least one of those dates for this month, with the caveat that the earlier you do it, the more feedback you'll be able to get on the reduction of options that we're going to further study, versus the later you do it, there will probably be some feedback on the exact program and the sizing of it as well. Is that a fair statement?
Yep.
And it's obviously people's
Yep.
calendars, right? Of the people that at least need to be in the room or on the Zoom, etc. We're not going to be able to strive for perfect attendance, but at the same time, just making sure the right people to answer the questions can be there. So, is there anything else on the format of it? I think we'll take the date conversation offline and align on that offline. My final comment on format is I think the sooner we do it, the more participation we'll get. I think we're working with a small luxury this year of how early school's getting out, that I don't think you have this there's probably at least an extra week of summer, Greg, this year, if not more. So I think camps don't start, stuff like that. So people tend to be around. I mean, there's no perfect answer, right? But I think that's what I'm thinking about in terms of calendaring. So I'll come back to each of you with some thoughts on that because I think we have a decent amount of data at this point.
Jason, I just want to be cognizant of getting too close to the long holiday. People
I
tend
agree.
to go away, or because of 4th of July.
Further reinforces sooner the better, right? Which that
Correct.
27th date is kind of dangerously close to that.
That's the one I'm worried about.
Okay. All right. So I will work with Jim. Go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
I was just going to say, we picked those days because we've done Thursdays previously. If those have to shift to, the Wednesday or the Tuesday, that doesn't really make a big difference on our end. Like I said, it was more just we had typically done them on Thursdays. So just when you go into the scheduling discussion. So.
Okay. Welcome, Roger. We're on agenda item 5, open forum discussion, but we're about to move on from it.
Yeah, my apologies. I had the wrong time in my calendar, and it was my fault. I thought it was 11, so I thought I'd join early. Nice job, Rod.
We took care of all the hard stuff, so.
Oh, good. Now I feel better.
Okay. Next is review of communication plan. So Skanska has sent Denise an updated version of one.
Excuse me, I have gotten nothing.
Either way, we're not talking about it today.
Okay, because I don't have it yet.
All right, let me see if I can find the email while we're talking. I think it came from C.
Came from Jess on, let's see, Wednesday, 6/5.
Yeah, it should have come from me. I sent it both to Jason and Denise. And Denise, I'll double check the email address, but
Okay.
I don't think I've ever sent you anything ever. So also maybe double checking your spam folder, but I'm going to check the email address just to triple check that I didn't misspell it.
I'll
Yeah,
re-forward
forward
it
it to me,
after.
Jason.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
re-forward it after and just make sure Denise
Mhm.
has it. So all I was
Please.
looking for under this agenda item is, given that we're a 3-person subcommittee,
Mhm.
in the desire not to try to edit everything on screen, is I was hoping that Roger would agree that we could delegate this to Denise to bring back to the committee for review. So let her mark it up with Skanska offline and bring back a version that we could vote on to bring to the full building committee.
I mean, I certainly do agree with that. I thought well, maybe I misunderstood from last. I actually thought we agreed that this was probably a good idea at the last meeting when Denise sort of stepped up to say she would do this, but I'm certainly in agreement.
We
Absolutely.
did. There was just a delay in getting it to her, which seems like there's still a delay, but we'll work through that. So I think, Denise, our goal for next meeting, and we're not going to set a date today, would be that you could either provide an update on it or provide a version that unfortunately Roger and I will have to kind of edit on the fly. We can certainly review it ahead of time and mark it
Correct.
up and bring our edits, but we're not going to be able to do that via email. But I think thank you to Skanska for at least taking another pass through it and kind of bringing it closer to Southborough, and we can kind of figure
Yep.
out how best to move with it from there.
Perfect. I did look. I don't have it. It could have. I have a very strong firewall, so it may have gotten in there, and I might have, when I looked at what was in there, didn't realize it. And if that's the case, I apologize.
Not a problem. Next is review of new frequently asked questions for posting. And I appreciate quick responses on this from Skanska and Arrow Street, but a question came up in public comment last full building committee meeting about why can't we just do the items that are on the Neary capital plan, like on the school committee capital plan that then feeds into the town's capital plan. If you recall, those items have been there for, gosh, I don't know, 4 or 5 years at least, as long as capital's been around. But that's what led to the town's decision to reach out to the MSBA, get into the eligibility, then feasibility, and then the school committee has carried that just because they haven't been taken care of as part of their capital planning. So I'm going to read aloud because I didn't have time to put this into a formal document. But what I'd like to have the committee vote on today is posting an answer to the following question. Why can't we just add a new roof, windows, and deal with any HVAC related items at Neary instead of doing a full renovation or new construction? That's the question. Does everyone remember that question from public comment at the last meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
I would propose a response as follows. As part of the feasibility study, a base repair option was explored. However, due to the volume of work that would need to be required to repair all building systems, the project would set off mandatory code upgrades. The project cost would be substantial and the district would be left with a building that still does not support the educational program. In addition, the building would have to meet the new stretch energy code, which includes upgrades to the building envelope, insulation, exterior walls, and windows. It's sort of choppy because I was cobbling a few responses together, but that was the general gist of what I'd like to see posted on our website and be able to be used to respond to public comment moving forward on that topic. So Roger and Katie both had their hands up, so go to Roger first.
Go ahead, Katie.
I was just going to say that you could also, the amount of those repairs would also affect the time that the students would be out of the building. You'd have to relocate. So phasing is another key that I don't think we mentioned quickly. You'd have to move all the kids out. You'd still end up with a longer term project for a similar cost. I know you're not trying to throw in cost, but we know that the cost would be very similar. But I think, I guess phasing is something that we should probably include as well. The amount of time it would take to do those repairs.
Well, and I think you bring up a good topic is, should we be including the cost? Right? Because I think that was one of the things that popped out at me, that led to, candidly, I think probably the motion I made last meeting of not considering it, because I think when, the individual that raised it, which I think it was a very good question, right? They were just looking at a spreadsheet and saying, this is what's on the capital plan. Do we also need to acknowledge that they likely aren't and shouldn't be carried on the school committee's capital plan moving forward, given where this project's at, because they can't be looked at in isolation. I don't know if, Greg, that would require a vote of your capital subcommittee, but that's their spreadsheet that was referenced. That wasn't a town spreadsheet. So that, I don't necessarily want to shy away from cost, Katie, because I think that's an important element. Is it may have just been a presentational issue that maybe we should have dealt with once we got into feasibility. But I'll let Greg react to that, and I'll go back to Roger.
Yeah, I think that we would need to reevaluate the cost of just updating the current building to meet the current standards. I think the report that Vertex did was done 4 years ago. Probably is outdated. With new energy codes and compliance issues, I think it would be far greater than I think the report outlines. And we would need to bring it to the, capital subcommittee and the school committee for a vote as we kind of move this work forward.
Okay, so I think based on that response, I think you should do that, Greg, sooner rather than later.
Yep.
Because then you could provide, if that's really your belief, right? Then I think they should update their schedule so it doesn't conflict with anything that this committee says. I don't think it takes away anything from the response that's been proposed to date, but we probably can't go as far as going down the cost of them pointing to the cost of base repair at this point. Roger, you took your hand down, so I put you behind Denise, but I'm going to go back to you because you were gracious and went to Katie first.
Well, and I was going to actually beg Denise to let me to defer to me anyway, because I don't know why I took my hand down, and I thought Denise might want to hear this before she commented. So I think the statement you read, and with the comments that have been made, Jason, again, I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, as I recall the comment that was made, at least the one that I was thinking of, it wasn't really a comment about, well, have you guys looked at just renovating it? That comment that I recall was a lot less than that. It was, well, why don't we just put a new roof on and an air conditioner? And there's a lot of reasons that I think we can't just do something like that. And I don't know if you think it's important to kind of speak to maybe not that specific comment, but something that says, to do any kind of a renovation here, or this, we can't continue in this school the way it is, right? And just throwing a roof on it and putting an air conditioner in it or whatever, okay, it's just not going to be allowed, period. But I'm not sure how to word this, or even if I'm off the rails here, with kind of remembering the comment that way, but then I'll let Denise finish this up.
Well, let me just react to that before you go, Denise. You're spot on with your memory, Roger, of how the comment was phrased. But then I went to the document that was being referenced, which wasn't on the screen, right? Which was the school committee capital plan, which then feeds the town's capital plan. And these are the items that are clearly listed in the school committee capital plan. But I think we're all, like, at least so far, saying the same thing. We really can't take one thing in isolation. We put a new roof on, then something else happens. And this is leaving, of course, the educational mission and vision of the school off to the side, which we have always tried to bring those together. So, and then I think it brings into the phasing part that Katie referenced when she jumps earlier in.
So if I could just respond to that before Denise.
Yeah, go ahead.
So these are two separate items, right? In my mind, one is there's a capital plan that, has some items on it. And then there's a you know, the new or renoed Neary, right? And they're really separate, right? In other words, yeah, there've been some items on a capital plan which are, you know, in, isolation, they are what they are. But I'm not sure they have much to do with this, school building project, right? Other than, sure, you're not gonna have to put two roofs on, you won't have to put a roof on if you have a new building, okay? Or if you've renoed the building to the degree it must be renoed, okay, to be able to move forward. But, okay, I'll stop my rant.
I think we all agree with your rant, though. Go ahead, Denise.
I think one of the things that, just seems to be picky, I'm sure, but I know that people understand when they see the word ADA, but once you do a project like this, you trigger compliance with ADA, correct?
30% of the value of the building, right, Katie?
That sounds right, yeah.
So I think if we even mention that in the rhetoric that we're going to put out, because people understand that. I know saying that we have to be compliant, is one thing, but I think when they see the fact that this triggers more than putting a roof on, more than changing the windows, because I remember him talking about windows and a roof. It's different. And that was one of the things I was going to say when I raised my hand, not that I wanted to have a conversation with him, but he wanted to know why we couldn't do just that. That triggers so much more, especially this building, making it compliant would be very difficult and very expensive. That's my comment.
Right, then Roger again.
So Mike, I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly that Katie, the base repair cost you've identified is the cost to do all that work to bring it up to code.
That's right.
That is what I'm recommending bringing to the school committee to update the capital plan to include the costs of base repair.
Well,
Yes.
I think you would carry two numbers, or you may carry three numbers. You carry a base repair cost.
Yep.
Which is just the cost to bring all the building mechanicals up, but it does not meet the educational.
But nor does the base repair.
No.
Right?
So
Okay.
there's three options. So base repair.
Yep.
There's a number that goes to that, right? We all know, we all have those numbers, right? That's just dealing with the infrastructure of the building and does not deal with any of the educational elements that have been outlined in the ed plan, right?
Right.
Then there's a renovation option, which deals with your educational plan and the building mechanicals.
Mhm.
And then there's a new construction option that deals with your educational plan and new construction, right? Like, and that's using a 2-grade scenario. Like, I think you carry all three of those numbers until we finalize this phase.
Okay.
Then I think there's two other items you should have in there. A 4-grade configuration for a new school. And because a new 4-grade school and a renovated 4-grade school is essentially the same number, I think you can bucket that together in one. And then I think there's that next option is essentially what it's going to take down the road to deal with Finn or Woodward or some combination if we only do a 2-grade configuration Neary, regardless of whether we do base repair or not.
Yep.
Right? I just think that that's a number that, right? And I know you don't have that number, so we can put to be determined for now, but that's something I think it got to come out of the committee's work. Then I think we could refine our frequently asked question initial response down the road once the capital committee has, your capital committee, not the towns, the school capital committee has adopted that revised presentation, if they so choose.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Roger.
So, in alignment with what Jason just said about the three options, and I guess I'm gonna sound like I'm still on my rant a little bit. Is there a way you can actually mute me even if I can't, even if I don't want to be muted? Even as the chair, you might have that ability. I'm not
I
sure,
refuse to
Greg.
do it.
I'm not sure what you meant when you said you were planning to bring, or expand you didn't say expand, but the base repair number that you were planning to bring to the school committee was gonna include some other things. Now that, based on what Jason described as the three options, I don't think base repair is ever gonna be the Reno number. And I think base repair by itself wouldn't rise to the level of the 30%. So that, I think a base repair would not trigger ADA requirements.
Yeah, it would.
But we would?
Yeah, so Roger,
The base repair is 30%? Is that, so what does that mean?
it's actually 100. It's I don't know that I can go look it up, but I think the
All right, well,
valuation of Neary is 17 million right now.
yes,
The existing structure 17 million, and the base repair was closer to 60 million. So it's actually a multiplier.
so are we talking about the same thing? Base repair being a new roof and something else? Okay, I mean, I'm not talking about the reno. I'm just talking
Yep.
about.
It's just dealing with asbestos, new roof, all of the systems meeting energy code.
ADA requirement.
Okay, so then I'm wrong. Okay, well, that's, all right, then that triggers it. So I will stop my rant.
And Roger, can I just add that my thinking is the reason why it needs to be on the capital plan is because you want a through line. Like people are going to then look to, say, oh, well, this was never on your capital plan. Like, I just think it's important that there's a through line between all of this work and the school committee's documentation and voted capital plan.
I agree.
Yeah. Right now, the documents aren't tying to each other, which led to a very good question, in my opinion. Okay. So how do we want to proceed? Are we okay with an initial response today based on what I outlined? And then the communications subcommittee will update and further expand upon it once the school committee takes the actions, or the subcommittee, you guys tell me what you'll need to do procedurally there, takes action on your documents to align them. Does that make sense? So
Which is your document? Is that the one that's gonna be provided to Denise?
So all I'm asking for today, and I'll reread it just so everyone's on the same page, is the statement that I read at the beginning.
Yeah, I agree with that, by the way.
Okay, so do you need me to reread it then?
I don't.
Okay, Denise, you good?
I'm good.
Okay, then I will move that the subcommittee authorize the chair to post as a response to a frequently asked question the statement that was read earlier in the meeting, with the understanding that it will be updated upon further action by the school committee or school committee capital committee.
Second.
For any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Denise? Denise?
Are you muted, Denise?
Aye.
Heard. And Roger?
Aye.
And I might as well. So that's a 3-0 vote. All right, that brings us to public comment. Any public comment? Seeing none, meeting schedule, I will coordinate via email when we're ready for our next meeting. I always appreciate this group's willingness to meet on pretty quick notice. So I will coordinate as we're ready, but my guess is we're going to have some quick, half hour, 45-minute type meetings, to answer questions that come up. Any other business for today for the communications subcommittee? All right, then I'll move to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second. And I do apologize for being late again.
No worries. All right, roll call vote, Denise?
You look frozen.
Yes,
Denise.
it freezes every time I ask for a vote.
That's,
Roger, I'll get your vote.
aye.
Denise, we did not hear an aye from you.
Oh,
Are you-
aye. I'm sorry, aye.
And I am aye as well. So we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming together tonight.
Nice to
Bye-bye.
see you, everyone.